Hey there and welcome. Have you ever gotten to the end of a long day of work or, a marathon study session and just felt completely wiped out? I'm not just talking tired, I mean that feeling where your brain is just running on empty. Well, today we're going to dive deep into the science behind that exact feeling. We're going to explore why it happens and, way more importantly, how understanding it can help you recharge your brain and actually get way, way better at learning.
I mean, it's a feeling we've all gotten pretty used to, right? Just staring at a screen for hours, trying to soak up information. Whether it's in back-to-back video calls or a late-night cram session, it just feels different. It's this unique kind of exhaustion. And it turns out there's a very real scientific reason for that.
And look, this isn't just you thinking you're tired. This is backed up by some serious data. A 2022 study looked at medical students and found that what they call Zoom fatigue was hitting a staggering 48% of them. Almost half. Half of the students felt this intense level of exhaustion just from online learning. So what is really going on inside our heads?
Okay, so here's our game plan for today. First up, we're going to unpack the screen fatigue problem. Then we'll get into the good stuff, restoring your brain's power. After that, we'll connect the dots with how your brain builds memory. And finally, we'll tie it all together with a practical blueprint for learning. Sound good? Let's get into it.
All right, first section, the screen fatigue problem. We might call it Zoom fatigue, but that's really just a nickname. It's a catch-all for a much deeper neuropsychological thing that happens anytime we force our brains to maintain intense focus for a long, long time.
The real culprit here has a name. It's called directed attention fatigue, or DAF for short. Now, what's so fascinating about this is that it has nothing to do with how strong your focus is. It's all about the massive amount of energy your brain burns, constantly pushing away distractions. The little email pop-up, the dog barking outside, even your own thoughts about what's for dinner. That constant act of saying, no, not now, is what completely drains your mental battery.
And to really get this, you got to know that our brains have two main types of attention. First, there's directed attention. That's what you're using right now to listen to me. It's effortful, it's deliberate, and it is absolutely a finite resource. But then you've got involuntary attention. This is the effortless kind. Think about when a beautiful sunset or a sudden noise grabs your attention. You don't try to look, it just happens. And right there, that's the central conflict for our brains. One system drains us, and the other can actually recharge us.
So how can you tell if your directed attention tank is running on fumes? Well, the symptoms are probably going to sound pretty familiar. You get way more distractible than usual. You might feel impatient or kind of irritable for no good reason. You find yourself forgetting little things, or it suddenly feels impossible to make a simple plan. That's not a character flaw, that's your brain sending up a flare, telling you it desperately needs a break.
So we've kind of diagnosed the problem, right? Now let's talk about the cure. Because the good news is there is a powerful science-backed antidote to this kind of mental fatigue.
And it's called attention restoration theory, or ART. The idea at its core is actually pretty simple, but it's also profound. To recover from the exhaustion of using your directed attention, you need to switch gears and engage your involuntary attention. You're essentially giving that overworked part of your brain a much-needed rest by just letting the world gently capture your focus for a bit.
So according to this theory, the best kinds of restorative environments have four key things going for them. Being away just means getting a mental break from your to-do list. Extent is being in a place that feels big enough that you could wander and explore. Compatibility is about the environment fitting what you want to do, like a quiet park is perfect for a peaceful walk. And then there's the last one, fascination. And this is the secret sauce.
See, fascination can be hard, like watching a super intense action movie, which still kind of demands your focus. But soft fascination, that's the key. This is what happens when you're watching clouds drift by, or listening to leaves rustle in the wind, or just watching water flow in a stream. It engages your attention just enough to stop your mind from circling back to your worries, but it does it so gently that your brain's focus muscles can finally, truly relax and recover.
Okay, so this is a really crucial point. Once our brain is restored, it's not just rested, it's actually primed for one of its most important jobs, learning and building memories. So let's connect those dots right now. So how on earth does our brain handle the absolute flood of information it gets every single day? Well, it uses a clever system called a schema. A schema is basically a mental blueprint or a pattern that your brain builds from all your past experiences. Think about going to a restaurant. You already know the basic script, right? You arrive, you order, you eat, you pay. You don't have to figure it all out from scratch every single time. That's a schema at work.
Honestly, the best way to think about a schema is as a kind of mental scaffolding. When you learn something new, your brain doesn't just throw it into a big, messy pile. Instead, it looks for an existing scaffold, an existing schema, to attach that new piece of information to. This makes the whole process of building new memories way more efficient and a lot more organized.
Let's just make this super clear with that restaurant schema. Because you already know this predictable 4-step sequence, your brain can free up its energy to focus on the new and interesting details of the experience, like the specific food you ordered, the great conversation you had, the cool decor. Schemas literally free up your mental resources for what really matters. Okay, this brings us to our final and maybe most important section, the blueprint for learning. We're going to take everything we've talked about, fatigue, restoration, and schemas, and tie it all together into a practical framework that you can use to learn way more effectively.
And here it is. This is the single most important connection we're going to make today. When your brain is suffering from directed attention fatigue, it just doesn't have the energy left over to build that crucial mental scaffolding. New information feels totally overwhelming because you don't have a solid framework to hang it on. And this is explained perfectly by something called cognitive load theory. Think of your working memory. That's the mental desktop where you process information, as being pretty small. It has a very limited capacity. When we're fatigued, or when new information is just dumped on us all at once, that mental desktop gets overloaded. And when it's overloaded, there are zero resources left for the deeper, more important work of building and connecting to those long-term schemas.
So what do we do? How do we manage this cognitive load? Well, we can use smart, brain-friendly learning strategies. Chunking is a big one. That just means breaking down complex information into smaller, bite-sized pieces so you don't overload your system. Dual coding is another, using both visuals and words to explain something, which taps into 2 different channels in your brain. And of course, spaced repetition, revisiting information over time, which strengthens those neural pathways and moves knowledge from your fragile working memory into strong, durable, long-term schemas.
So it really all comes together, doesn't it? Managing your attention isn't just about being more productive in the moment. It's about giving your brain the rest it needs to do the deep, crucial, and amazing work of learning. By understanding fatigue, embracing restoration, and using these brain-friendly strategies, you can literally build the mental scaffolding for knowledge that will last a lifetime. So the only question left is, how will you use this blueprint to redesign your day?